Now you can't hear all the
Welcome.
And now you couldn't hear all the incriminating stuff that we were talking about before I unmuted the button. So I guess that's a good thing. Can't get us in trouble now.
Welcome to Thursday night Generational Change live stream.
And we have a special guest already.
We have Lulu.
Doesn't take very long. So we are ready to talk about a lot of different things this evening, but there's always some interesting topics abound. But of course, today's a big day because the COVID relief bill was signed into law by Joe Biden. So what are we going to do? What are we going to what are we to make of this $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, Jen? What are we to make of it?
I don't know. I was sort of working on my own little Justice with Jen segment in my head about how I want to talk about the Chauvin trial that started. So I wasn't with you on the news and news. I'm sorry. I was watching jury selection today. It's like watching paint.
Well, why don't we jump on that first if you want to talk about the George Floyd case, because I don't know how many people are following it too intently just yet. I think they're still going through jury selection.
There's people following it. Yeah, they're in jury selection right now, which is really it's pretty boring, I gotta say. But they yesterday there were a bunch of in limine motions that were made, and it was interesting because you know that they actually are having really good lawyers when I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and this is the guy who represents the defendant.
Well, somebody has to do it.
Yeah. I was a criminal defense lawyer. I think it's a great thing to do, but this guy's really good. I mean, he's definitely good. He's getting things excluded that should be excluded. And I hate thinking that for sort of the same reason I hate that Roe versus Wade is a bad decision. Like I wish it weren't. And so what was really interesting yesterday is there was apparently a bystander to the George Floyd incident that was there on the scene and is someone who is an MMA specialist and trains people in submission techniques and he just happens to be coming out of his gym there when this is happening. And so this guy is called as a fact witness. He was somebody who was there. But the prosecution is wanting to use him as saying what his expertise is in subduing people, right? And so instead of just what he saw. And so there was just a whole motion about whether or not his testimony could include the other things. And it was really interesting.
Well, the reality is whatever attorney he's going to get is going to be an attorney that will be from the Fraternal Order of Police approved and, just a whole bunch of different things that are going to become a major sticking point here, which is a lot of people don't like the law because the law has a way of working for the innocent and for the guilty. And that is something that a lot of people don't like. But in many ways,
this needs to go properly. And but jury selection, and I have to do a shout out to my Texas law school peeps, because in Texas, it's the only state in the union that we call it voir dire.
Yep.
And so I remember when I moved to Florida and I used the term voir dire, and they looked at me like I was
like they would have any idea exactly what that means.
I'm like, voir dire. So yeah, and the jury pool is, let's just be real, regular people, So it's not necessarily an easy or fun process to select of those people. But apparently they have all been given very lengthy questionnaires long ahead of time and have all been like, I don't know. I'm watching this. I'm watching this case.
It's almost impossible not to know what's going on. I think that's the hardest reality of this particular case is that people are. It's like the OJ case. Everyone is pretty much, especially in that area.
Yeah, except for we all saw this one happen live.
That's true. That's true.
We all witnessed it. That we have an entire world of witnesses. That's the thing that differentiates this from OJ. Well,
I do think that it will be a fair trial if they aren't going to sensationalize it, in an overt type of way, because
I hope so. I hope so for so many reasons, but it's very frustrating to me when I see that there are bigger security concerns and extra, militia type people brought in to be there anticipating that it's going to not go right. That just makes me sad on so many levels. And the fact that we live in a world where we're prepared to be so disappointed that we actually believe that the people are going to set that city on fire.
Right.
And that's just so, and by the way, I really wouldn't blame people for being that angry. I really wouldn't. This isn't, I'm not sad about them doing it. I'm just sad that we live in a world where I basically expect that to happen. That's what I'm sad about. I'm not sad that they're burning property. I'm really just not all.
No, and I don't think that, I think that when a society descends into anarchy, that there really isn't much that you can do. You just have to make dramatic change. And I think that's a good segue into the news and amuse topic, which of course we start with the COVID relief bill. 1.9 trillion. There's, again, look, it's not without the good parts, as we've discussed. Obviously, the $1,400 checks will help a lot of people, but they're means tested checks, which means that there could be as many as 17 million people that were entitled to get the check and are not going to get it because of whatever reason they felt the need to means test it. And the thing that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, you know what reason. Don't say we don't know what reason.
No, I know we know the reason. I'm just saying
we know exactly why.
It doesn't make any sense if you're just looking at it from a logistical standpoint. It doesn't. If somebody is above a certain income threshold, for example, and they, ultimately are not able to get the check, it wouldn't make sense not to give it to them because they're going to get it taxed out of their annual income anyway. So one way or the other, it's going to get back to where it needs to be, whether it's in a person's hands or taxed back into the economy. So the idea that we have to withhold these checks is lunacy. It makes absolutely no sense. It's the thing that doesn't again, the media spin machine is very powerful. It's very powerful. And one of the things that I noticed is it turns out, they were really going hard. Obviously the progressive movement was going hard to try to get the Squad, a number of others, to withhold their vote to get the $15 minimum wage back in. Now, apparently one of the congressional representatives, Jared Golden, who's from Maine, he's in that.
They have moose.
They have a lot of things in Maine.
I know.
And so what ultimately ended up happening, which I thought was very interesting, is that he ended up withholding his vote. There was no fanfare addressed to it because he withheld his vote because he thought that the $15 minimum wage needed to be in there. I think there was also something about healthcare that needed to be in there. And both things were withheld, which I thought, you would think, for such a must-pass bill, somebody's going to challenge power. Joe Manchin did, but Joe Manchin was only doing it for the bad stuff. And now
I don't care though, actually, the reasons in that don't bother me as long as we have somebody on the right side of it, everybody can have their own personal reasons.
But what I do think is very interesting is if you look at this guy's feed on social media and the fact that he did withhold his vote because he felt that it needed to have a $15 minimum wage. Just that alone is enough to want to pull the bill back. The way that his social media got flooded with people saying that you're a traitor to the American people, you're trying to take their stimulus check away and this and that. I mean, these are people who claim to be educated, who claim to actually know what's going on. And the idea that they don't know is really amazing. That's got to be a better picture than Bernie. Goodness, come on. Man. All right. So I'm going to...
Because I didn't realize that you would put the picture up of that.
Yeah, no.
I didn't know that was... I thought I was just sort of...
Yeah, no, this is...
And I was included in that.
No, so I wanted to... I wanted to... Why is this not working?
What do you mean? Stop screen.
Okay. That makes sense. So even I am still learning how to do this. And so... no, I think...
what are we looking at?
Oh, news and amuse. Okay. So what I thought was important and, looking at one particular representative who decided, I'm going to hold back. I'm not going to give in without there being something that's tangible that has long-term effects. See, everything that's been passed is a Band-Aid. There's nothing that is being passed that has any real value to, long-term sustainability. Yes, the child tax credit helps. It absolutely does. The rent relief does help. The, local aid, it helps. It's not like it doesn't help, but this is just a Band-Aid. This isn't real sustainable protection against serious, long-term effects.
Does anybody think it is?
I don't know. I mean,
I
that's
don't
how they're
think
trying to
so.
sell it on the media, which is just crazy. And who were the Democrats negotiating against? It wasn't the GOP. It was their corporate donors.
I don't like at this point, I have no expectation of any policy that's going to do anything that's remotely helpful in this country.
And so where does that leave us?
It
How
leaves
far
us
down the rabbit
circling a drain
hole?
and fighting defense, always being on defense.
Yeah, but when does it get better, I think is the question.
When people stop electing corporate tools.
Well,
And we stop getting completely stifled and censored. And more people give enough of a crap to support what we're doing, you know? So that's when. That would be my theory.
Yeah, our show's getting really stifled.
But you know what I did think of, though? Seriously, a lot of the people that we watch their stuff, we don't watch them live.
Yeah, that's fair too.
And a lot of those people don't like necessarily live stream. And the kind of people that watch are watching to maybe support you and your content, but it's not necessarily your live stream. So I think maybe we need to look at it, since we're doing it as a podcast and not just a Facebook, Twitter live stream. I think that we need to look at it a little bit deeper than that.
No, that's definitely true. And
you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying. Not everybody is going to necessarily be watching live, and that's fair. But generally
we're being
speaking,
stifled.
our numbers are being stifled, and it's pretty clear what's going on here. And I think everybody's dealing with this. We have to spread the word as effectively as we can. But the reality is, we're not going to be able to get where we need to go unless we have a fair internet. That I think also leads back to one of the big problems in the Trump administration was Ajit Pai, head of the FTC, who took away our ability to do universal broadband. Just simple things like that. But again, you ask yourself,
we need to nationalize those things.
Yeah,
we just do.
We do. We need universal broadband.
Yeah.
And the idea that we're living in a country where we have to worry about our freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Like people thought it was bad under Trump. Oh no. It is going to get so much worse under this presidency.
It really is.
It's just, you're seeing it all the time. Hard Lens Media just went through a nightmare situation with YouTube where they removed their content and they couldn't go live and all that stuff. And they had to, go through the process of getting, they're back up again, thank goodness. But, you have to ask yourself, how often do you need to be playing defense as far as that's concerned?
Always, on a daily basis.
Serious business. But
you know what? This brings me to, and I just have to say this because it's a really good quote. And Jennifer Farmer, who's coming on, this is something that I heard her say when she went on with Nina. Every day that we live has to be an act of resistance. And that's what we live with. And that's just the way it is.
Does that mean that
we're always on defense?
Yeah, but again, we don't want to be living this way.
No, but until we become the majority and them the minority, we're chiseling away like Sisyphus. Like that's what this feels like. It's like, I really feel like we're just pushing this giant boulder up a hill. And they're just, you just keep hoping that you're going to get to the top at some point before you get crushed by the giant Indiana Jones boulder, which is what it feels like.
Well, we're not, I think that we are given just enough to not cause trouble. That's what I think that this stimulus package was all about. Was about making sure that we had just enough so that way people are not in the streets with their yellow vests on. But who knows how much longer that's going to happen.
It's pathetic.
Sam, good to see you. What should be the first thing that we coalesce around? I would say right now, Representative Jayapal is going to reintroduce Medicare for all.
We need healthcare yesterday.
In a week. So I would definitely, I would be going all in to make sure that we at least get a floor vote on Medicare for all. Because look at what happened when you got a floor vote on the $15 minimum wage. Now Kyrsten Sinema's political career is literally in shambles. And people are never going to forget that because she actually decided to make a spectacle on national television with her vote. So
somebody needs to build a guillotine in front of that woman's house.
Yes. And
then eat cake.
Well, yes. And of course, yeah, a lot of people are pro yellow vest. And I think that that's what's coming. I think that people are going to get out into the streets. They're not going to take this anymore. And what I like to tell a lot of people when you're observing how this whole political machination happens over the odyssey, if you will, that a lot of people have gone through over the past several years, Think about how much you know now compared to what you didn't know back in 2015 when Bernie first started running. I mean, I thought I knew a thing or two about politics. I didn't know nothing compared to what I know now. Now I really understand how things work at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. And that's something that I think a lot of people are aware of. And think about all the things that we've learned about who's really working for us and who's really working against us. The people who perceive to be, helping the cause or really fighting on our behalf. We really don't have that many fighters per se.
Speaking of fighters, though, now Marcia Fudge officially got confirmed. So we will get a date on a special election in Ohio's. It's 10th, right? Is it 10th or 11th?
11th.
11th. The seat that Nina's running for. So that will now be an official election day, which is exciting.
Yes. And it's going to be a big day. And obviously, we need to get Nina into Congress.
We need to get Nina into Congress.
I think that, again, look, nobody's perfect and everyone is going to be critical. When you're running for office, there are things that people have to say. I've seen too much of Nina Turner. There is no one who has been more loyal to Bernie Sanders besides Bernie's wife than Nina Turner. No one stood on the train tracks the way that she did. And she did it when it wasn't actually politically convenient for her to do it. There were many opportunities for her to sell out, not.
She's the bomb.
She is everything that we do need. And yeah, I do think that Nina is much more forthcoming about what her intentions are versus those who say they're going to do something to actually help people, but in reality, they're not going to do much of anything. So
she's rattling cages.
She is.
She might. I mean,
they don't want her in.
No.
No, that's true.
It will be glorious.
Here's some interesting information. Lee Camp, who is a friend, he got his Patreon removed. Vanessa Beeley's YouTube. You see, so this suppression tactic.
It's a problem.
It's a really big problem.
And it is definitely, this has corporate neoliberalism all over it.
All over it. And think about it. Right now, we're in a very precarious situation because we just had, and this is part of News and Amuse, we had a landmark circumstance actually take place for the progressive movement. In the state of Nevada, DSA members effectively took over the Nevada Democratic State Party.
It's brilliant.
And when that happened, all of the corporate Democratic members of the state party quit.
And their staff.
And on top of that, they went out the door like bandits, taking all $450,000 in the state party coffers to basically line the pockets of the upcoming U.S. Senate race for the seat that they're trying to protect in 2 years.
And what's interesting is these are the same people that were we need Democrat unity. We need to get behind Joe. We need they're all unity until it goes to the left. And they're every man for himself. We're sticking with our corporate donors.
But the beautiful thing is that now you have a blueprint of exactly what you need to do in order to take over the state party. Now, we put out a tweet basically to the same effect saying, well, you know what? The blueprint's here to do it in Florida. I mean, this is a working class state through and through.
If they didn't just put Manny Diaz in charge of the state party.
That's true, but we're not prepared for that because we don't have the same type of state as Nevada.
No.
However, that doesn't mean that we can't learn from what they've done and how to take over local chapters until eventually it becomes a state initiative. Stacey Patel came very close a few years ago to becoming the state party chair. I don't think they were as well prepared this time because I don't think anybody really anticipated that Terry Rizzo was going to have to drop. Terry kind of dropped in a scandal circumstance because of our state party loots the coffers. They've taken money out of it to pay for their lavish lifestyle that, frankly, a lot of people in the consultant class like to do. Because living on the high hog is what a lot of people do when they get into politics, because that's their intention.
So basically, Nevada sets this nice blueprint, but being that we're Florida, we're definitely going to be further behind in being able to accomplish said feat. Not to mention, we're also just a very different state than Nevada.
No, we're definitely a different state. Is this the full image?
Yeah, here.
Yeah. Watch. One of the things that
but that helped.
Yeah, no, I want to. I
Okay.
want to be able to get it up there.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that I
don't even
was
know
very
this
important-
story because I thought we had already decided what we were going to do for that this week. And so this is kind of a new story to me.
This is a new story, but it's a story that is very relevant to what we're talking about here. Because again, like I said, if we are going to take over state parties at the grassroots level in order to have those fighting on behalf of the working class and not of corporate special interests, it's going to be prudent on everyone to understand who the true believers are and who are just the bit players who are doing it on behalf of the establishment for a paycheck. And nowhere was that more evident this week than this gentleman who ended up getting what I would like to say caught. He ended up getting caught because he's somebody who has been basically one of those vote blue no matter who, you know,
And then take that down.
kind of people. There is a cottage industry on social media, especially on Twitter, of people who just dunk on Trump, dunk on the GOP, and talk nonstop about how great the Democrats are without even acknowledging any of their flaws. And so that, of course, brings us to our bootlicker of the week, which is Brooklyn Dad. I don't know what this guy's actual name is, but what I do know is that he's one of those people who shot up like a rocket ship. You know, the thing on social media that's very interesting.
But what does he have to do with? Like, what makes him a bootlicker?
What makes him a bootlicker is that he's one of those establishment shills who's always talking about how great the Democratic establishment is, but he's one of those people that was always talking about how terrible Bernie is, how terrible the left is. And dare I say, here's a guy who was also saying horrifically nasty things about Lindsey Boylan coming forward against Governor Cuomo.
So I don't get it. So is he just a total neo-lib? Like,
can I finish what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay.
And he also came forward against Tara Reid, saying that she was terrible and a liar and makes up the entire story about Joe Biden. So the kicker of this story is the fact that Brooklyn Dad has been a paid operative by the Democratic establishment for over a year to the tune of almost $60,000 to just write a whole bunch of neo-lib crap online. And that's a well-paying job, let me tell you. 60 grand to basically just say whatever the Democratic establishment wants.
Doesn't that make you wonder how many of those there are out there at all different levels
Bingo.
that are on our thread?
Bingo.
So
do you really think that this is the only guy who's doing this?
There are a bunch of people doing it.
I'd be curious to know if this is somebody who is actually being paid on the low end.
It very well could be. Well, it's probably like a pyramid scheme.
Oh, I have no doubt. But again, the intention is always to protect the interests of the corporate, of the corporate donors. That's what it's all about. And that is no different than what the COVID relief bill ultimately ended up becoming, because the truth is the Democrats never needed to negotiate with the GOP.
I know.
They could have put whatever they wanted through.
But they like to share their power. You know how Chuck Schumer was. He was all about sharing his power.
Don't you know? Got to get along. We got to get along.
If you're going to do that, you're going to need spectacles.
Yeah, well, you can get me a fake pic. I'm not going to rip the Bernie spectacles off. Those got to stay on, but again, this guy, I mean, they're so vitriolic.
But so how did he get found out that he was a paid op? Like, how did that come up?
I don't know if anybody in the audience is watching right now who would have any idea.
Why would that get, because I do believe there's lots of these people out there.
Yes, there absolutely are a lot of them. And what I think is the next step in this process, because again, it's always more interesting when you can discover exactly what's going on and how people are able to do this. To me, if you're being paid to basically write this nonsense, how many others are being paid and at what clip? Because there's a lot of people who do this. This is a cottage industry, like I said.
Maybe these guys that are driving our producer crazy in the chat are paid operatives. Although we're not a big enough station where people are taking enough of an interest in pay operatives.
We're definitely not big enough yet in order to, I think some people just want to have a good time, and that's fine.
And it's fun for them to just sort of troll us.
No, why wouldn't they? They're just having fun. So again, like I said, this guy, and what was even more interesting, observing it, because most people thought that this was completely ridiculous, that this guy was getting paid to basically say all the nonsense that he was saying. But what ultimately ended up happening, which I thought was very interesting, was you have to see the people who are part of that, resistor group, vote blue no matter who. They're all saying, well, he was really just helping beat Trump. No, you got to look at the substance. That type of stuff is very important. We cannot ignore the fact that these guys are doing it for money. They are selling you out for money. They are never, ever going to challenge the status quo. That's what's never going to happen. You're never going to have anybody who is effectively going to say, who is part of this consultant class, if you will. They're never going to say we need universal health care. They're never going to say we need a $15 minimum wage. They're never going to say we need reoccurring checks. They're never going to say we need to end the wars. They're never going to say that we need criminal justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. They're not going to do that because it goes against corporate special interests. The only thing that is safe is when you're dunking on the other side, because at the end of the day, they all share the same donors. And as long as either of them are in power, they're going to get exactly what they want every time. Look at the COVID relief bill that was passed when Trump was in office. Is it really that much different than what you're getting now? You want to say there's less corporate welfare? That's true. There's still a lot of it. And they already have had their round. And the media cannot keep down the fact that a lot of people are incessant about the fact Warren Buffett's now worth $100 billion. $100 billion. Yeah, he really earned that $100 billion, let me tell you. And if nothing else, I think it proves an even bigger point about who's actually benefiting in this country right now. The people who are benefiting from the COVID relief bill, really benefiting, are the people at the tippy top. That's who benefits. The working class of this country is not benefiting from this bill. They are getting a temporary relief financial compensation. That's it. But it's not going to last. And the jobs are going away. And people don't have health care. And the debt that people are in right now. Do you think that all that money that's been put on the credit card is just disappearing? No, it's not disappearing. It's there. And something's got to be done about it. Otherwise, as a number of people have been talking about, we're heading for the same situation that we were in back in 2009 with the housing crisis. They don't want people to have enough money that they can pay off their debt, because if you can't, then that becomes assets that can be seized by the government and Wall Street. That's what they want. This is just one big game. This is one big Ponzi scheme.
It's a pyramid scheme.
It is.
But let's move on to better and more interesting things, because I'm really excited to talk to our guest tonight. She's an author of, we'll talk about this new book. But I was listening to her on a podcast with our friend Nina Turner, and I have some notes and things that she said. But Jennifer Farmer is somebody who has been involved in politics for a very, very long time in the in a public relations capacity. And so I don't know her. I'm looking forward to meeting her. So can we do that?
Yes, we absolutely
You're in control
can.
of this. You've got the mouse.
I'm trying to write the entire
I know,
banner
because
through.
you do. Well, first of all, stop that.
Yes. Remove.
No, that.
Okay.
And now do that.
Bingo.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
We're good. I'm glad to see you,
Yeah.
because I listened to your the podcast that you did with Nina, but of course it's audio only. And so and for me, there is something really about like expression and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like I was trying to picture the two of you sitting there and talking, but this is so much better to be able to see you. So would you just introduce yourself and say what your background is? I know that you worked with Nina years ago, and then you would even realize that you were there 10 years prior to her being there I believe in Ohio, correct?
Not exactly. So I met Senator Turner when she was a state senator. And when she was a state senator, I was the deputy chief of staff for the Senate Democrats in Ohio. So that's how she and I initially met. And, we've been friends, and she's been an occasional client since then, but certainly someone who I hold in the highest of esteem.
So do we.
Someone who I know. And, we both love her.
Oh, for sure. And, I obviously this book is not something that it's hard for me, because I feel like I don't want to, I only want to be kind and respectful and just. Like, that's all I want to do. And sometimes I don't know, and I don't want to overstep and stuff, but this is a guide about I want to say that everything that happens in terms of oppression or injustice is something that's exponentially in the Black community. And then when you add to it Black women, it's like a whole other exponential level of just having to deal with grief and aggravation. So as just a woman, I've had to deal with, we all have. I mean, we all have. But then I know how much worse it has been for Black women. And I am just not such the best position to talk about that. And that is one of the main things that I'm so thankful that you will come on and talk about that. So explain why you were inspired about this book, like based on your history and your world, what you've seen.
So, great question. I wrote this book after reading countless leadership books and realizing that in all the advice they gave to women about how to make it, and all the advice they gave to ambitious people, there was a glaring omission in terms of what I would face as a Black woman walking into different professional spaces and then just navigating life. So there was a time in my life where I thought, if you just study hard, if you show up in these professional spaces and you work hard, if you're really, really smart, that was all you needed to do. What I did not appreciate is that as a Black woman, it doesn't matter how many books you've written. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter the professional experience. When you walk into a new situation, you must always be prepared to prove yourself. And certainly sometimes we think, okay, well, I've done all of this. As soon as people read my resume and they hear about my credentials, that will be enough. And, as someone who has worked in politics and public relations, I have been in situations where, join a diverse team, a large team, and people want to explain to me how PR works. And I had to tell someone recently, listen, I've been doing PR for 20 years, and I wrote a book about PR. I've lectured on PR. I know how it works. And whenever I experience those types of things, I always wonder how much is race and how much is gender. And the truth is there's a combination of both. So that is what brought me to deciding, we need leadership books that are written from the lens of gender and race and speak to the very things that Black women will experience in professional settings and in life.
I think that's so spot on. I think it's really important. And I also think it's important for young people. And you spoke a lot about how important it was with I don't want this to be like creepy, like I was stalking you and telling you what you said, but it was just, I made some notes, but just talking about how important this was for you with your daughter and your nieces and being a role model and setting this path, especially for Black women that just wasn't there when you were that age.
Yeah. And, Jen, it's very interesting that you say that, because I think as mothers, I thought, and as women who will be mothers, if you choose that route, I always thought, well, you teach your kids, you tell your kids, but kids learn a lot based on what they see you doing, and based on, there's a lot more that's caught than taught, I should say. And so what I realized is that as I worked to deconstruct harmful patterns in my life, even if I am not vocalizing that to my daughter, she will see it, she will embrace it, and there will be certain things that she may not have to encounter. So for instance, one thing, if you listen to the interview, I'm sure you heard this part, but I don't talk about weight. I don't care if I've gained 50 pounds. I don't care if I've lost 50 pounds. I don't talk about weight. I don't talk about my body in a negative way. I don't look in the mirror and say, oh my God, girl, look at that love handle or whatever. I don't say that, because my daughter is paying attention and I want her to have a love of her body, however she presents and however she appears.
Yeah. And then, there is this added factor for Black women, and it can be things as specific as your hair. It could be how you dress, or whatever ethno-cultural things that somebody wants to display of themselves is treated differently when it's perceived as Black. And this is this added thing that white women don't deal with. The harassment, yes, like there is definitely, like you said, it's an intersection of race and gender.
Right.
But you're dealing with so much more. Do you want me to, can you move your microphone closer?
Sure. Is that better? Or let me.
Is that better, John? Yeah.
Our producer will let us know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's so important. And so basically you found a hole a void of information in a particular area. And it just so happenstance is an area that you are a specialist in. So it makes sense to write a book. But talk about like where you see the crossover from work and personal. And really because we think about harassment much more in our workplace, like we think of it work related, but we don't necessarily think of it in just general. And I think that is also something that as a Black woman you have had to deal with in a very different way. There's that angry Black woman stereotype that we've been hearing about. And I have met some angry Black people. I've met some very angry lots of people, but it's just this ridiculous narrative that we're fed. And I think that you always have to be conscious of that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, anger is a legitimate emotion. It just is like every other emotion. There's no emotion that's good. There's no emotion that's bad. Anger is a legitimate emotion. But most Black women from the time that we were little girls have been counseled about how we show our displeasure. And the world is not comfortable hearing from Black women when we don't like something or when we want something to change. And so there's always a calculation of, how do I say this? How do I put it in writing? Do I need to put it in writing? Do I need to bring someone with me? Do I need to add a smiley face if I send an email? If something traumatic happens, how do I talk about it in a very, very level tone so that I don't make other people angry or afraid? And the other thing is that, our society is not really is not really equipped or trained to see Black women in the range of our emotions. And that is either, angry, really sad, or what have you. And so when you express vulnerability, when you showcase how you feel, someone is always going to be upset. And I think a lot about, and I talk about this in the book, is the construct of niceness. And there's this construct of niceness where you must make other people comfortable. You must prioritize their needs, even if it's at your expense. You must be super nice and you must be kind. Well, sometimes the kind thing to do is to be clear and to tell you, this is a boundary and I don't want you to cross it. And then when you've crossed it, you've crossed this boundary and that's not appropriate. So that's one thing. The other thing is sometimes we mistake depression or sadness for anger. And sometimes depression and sadness can present as anger when it's really someone who's really going through a difficult time and maybe they need supports for which they haven't accessed. So the angry Black woman trope, it is serious, it's damaging. It can lead Black women to suppressing how they feel. And we know that if we don't show emotion, if we suppress it, we become numb. That's not good. But then there are also physical manifestations in the body. And so one thing that I'm saying in the book is that we really have to deconstruct how we think about anger, particularly as it relates to Black women. And if you're someone who said, oh, well, because she told me how she felt, I'm intimidated by her, or she makes me uncomfortable, that is your job to sit with and to handle. That's not my job. But so often we want to put it back on the Black woman for expressing how she feels. And really that's what we teach our kids to do, is if something bothers you, communicate about it.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Jennifer Farmer, author of First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and in Life. Speaking of our good friend, Nina Turner, there was an incident that took place during Bernie's run for president that I still think stands out as an example of, I don't know how she kept it together under the circumstance, but Hillary Rosen, who is the head of SDK Knickerbocker, who is one of the biggest political hacks in all of DC politics, when she made her comment to Nina on national,
you know what we're talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, I'm sure you
when
do.
she made her comment on national television saying that you, Nina Turner, cannot speak for Martin Luther King.
No, she said you don't have standing to quote Dr. King. She said that all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I was like, "Oh!"
And I saw it live. I saw it live when it happened, and I just thought, listen, Nina,
ridiculous.
Nina's got a fire inside of her that I don't think people really understand, and how she held it in that moment.
But I'm gonna push back on that, on the fire inside of her, because I feel like that I don't feel like we have really allowed her to showcase all of who she is.
Nope.
It is convenient, and there are some people who like to see that fire inside of her, but she's a full human being who has vulnerability. And one of the critiques that I have based on how she has been presented is you only see that fire. And she is such a warm and a caring person. I don't know if you all have had the opportunity to watch her really, really engage with voters, but there's a genuine curiosity, there's a genuine warmth. And I wish that we showcase more of that instead of just the fire inside of her. But I know exactly what situation you all are referring to. I watched that interview and I was aghast. But here's the thing. Has she lost it in that moment, that would have been
all they would have talked about.
They were baiting her. That's what I feel like. I feel like their people are constantly baiting that, because that, first of all, if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
And there is a certain amount of drama. Just the mere fact that, like, you brought this up, I didn't know you were going to bring that up, like, because it's this like sort of drama thing.
Because I don't think
it was a terrible moment.
Yeah,
and it speaks to what we experienced. And here's the thing. We were fortunate that we saw that on TV, that kind of thing happens all the time in workplaces across the country. It's a beautiful example because I mean, it was just it was flabbergasting.
And it was and she did it in such a brazen, flippant way. Like she didn't even think twice about it.
It was just shocking.
And
it was shocking.
The thing about that really upset me is, one, it was totally brazen, you know, and when she said it, she had her chest out when she said it, you know?
Yeah.
But then when people online took her to task for that, she said, well, I've reached out to her and I'm waiting for her to call me back. And here's what I know about apologies and seeking forgiveness. When you want to apologize to someone, you don't need to put it on Twitter, or you don't need to say I've texted her or whatever. You wait until you've spoken with them. You ask them if it's okay. And I just felt like it was terrible. I felt like how she handled it poorly. And I felt like it was a classic display of what Black women experience in professional settings.
I wanted to jump through and grab her by her hair. I really did. Like I say this on the regular, and I'm noticing it more and more. And now I'm getting to the point where these women are my peers. Right? Like I'm pushing 50, right? So like this is my peer group. So we all grew up in the 70s, late 60s, right? Like we're in this group of people. These are women that needed an ass kicking. And I see it left and right. And I really want to say, like, where these women grew up, their childhood peers did them a disservice by not doing so. And I keep noticing this, like that woman, it's visceral. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just felt like infuriated about that.
The reason I wanted to bring that up is because one of the things that I've noticed in the years that I've gotten into politics, especially the last few years, is the way that the Black community, especially Black women, are patronized in a way that, you know, there's still what I perceive to be this sort of patting on the head thing, and always complimenting and saying how important the Black vote, especially the Black women vote, is to the Democratic Party, let's say. And then as soon as they ascertain power, they go right back down to the bottom. Yeah, we'll get to you maybe at some point, but, you know, we got priorities. And so I'm curious as to what that experience has been like for you personally as you've observed it, because again, I'm a white man, but I'm not blind. And I just want to make sure that people fully understand what it's like to have to go through that. And you go through it every couple of years. And I don't know how anybody deals with it anymore.
Well, I think I think what happens is you become a little bit skeptical. You not a little bit, you become a lot skeptical, and it's a turnoff, and it leads to disengagement. And I think it happens so frequently. Every election cycle, it happens, and it's discouraging. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, this is what I expect. And that's why when I see people who take political stances, and it may appear radical to some, it doesn't bother me, because if as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a
Yeah.
demand. There must be a demand, and you can't go and ask for it nicely. You have to take it. And I think that we're in this situation where a lot of people feel that there's no authenticity. I think it's what draws people to someone like Nina Turner, because they feel like she is authentic and that she deeply cares and she will fight for them. But you're absolutely right. I feel like we see this election cycle after election cycle. And what's disturbing for me is there are a group of people who, even though we know this, who will still try to beat Black people over the head if they do not vote the way that they want them to do. The way they want them to vote.
Yeah.
And this reached a fever pitch this past election cycle, and it was just it was sad.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, but, and as people that have recently been through a campaign, its demographics are seen in a monolithic way, in so many different areas, but specifically in the Black community, you're definitely treated like there's this monolith, like, oh, all Black people should vote this way because is anybody doing anything for a Black agenda on that? Is there reparations in your platform? Like what are you bringing to the party, figuratively, literally, and it's not much. And all of the things that would best suit really everybody in this country would exponentially help Black women. Things like single payer healthcare and childcare and public college and a minimum wage and all of these things. I mean, that is, as far as like the poverty and vulnerable, that it helps the people that are most vulnerable the most. And yet the Democrats are selling themselves, oh yeah, of course we're the party for the Black agenda. In what way?
And Jen and I were just talking before you came on the air about who were the Democrats negotiating with. They were negotiating against themselves, or specifically against their corporate donors, because they passed the bill without a single GOP vote. So you kind of have to wonder, well, what exactly are you holding back on?
Yeah.
That to me, I think speaks volumes. And I think a lot of people are starting to catch on to that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that we always need a group of people who are going to keep pushing the line. You can never become content just because your quote unquote party is in office. You still have to push the line. And one of the beautiful things that we saw last summer, of course, it was born out of tragedy and unspeakable horror, but we saw a protest movement, not just in the United States, but across the world, like what we haven't seen. I don't know if we've ever seen people take to the streets as we saw last summer. And that energy and that fire, and that demand, we have to be willing to level it even towards people who we consider our friends. And so I think that when people voted this past election cycle, the nation was very clear that the nation was in trouble and that people want change. And we have to be able to ask even our friends. We have to be able to hold them accountable as well. We can't go quiet just because our quote unquote party is in office. We have to be willing to hold whoever accountable, and the agenda has to be more important than the personality.
All right. And I wanted to just go back for a second because I'd written something down, and it's something that as a white person that I'm cognizant of, but don't really, it's hard to really understand it great, is the difference between like racism and colorism and what you deal with within the Black community, especially as darker skinned women have dealt with in the Black community, and what that's like, because I don't think that a lot of people that are white really understand what that's about, because to them it's all racism. So how can you be racist if you're Black? If you're Black, you can't be racist. I don't think people understand what that really looks like.
Okay, so I don't believe that Black people can be racist. Racism is about power, and so it's about power, and collectively Black people have experienced a loss of power. So I don't believe that Black people can be racist. When it comes to colorism, and when it comes to anti-Blackness, I think America is anti-Black by default. I think that even people who are interested in being anti-racist, they still have to do anti-racism their entire life. You don't get to the point where just because you have good feelings or just because you have a few Black friends or you've taken a few diversity courses where you can opt out. If you live in this country, as long as you are breathing, you are doing anti-racism work. And the thing is, because we all live in this world that is anti-Black by default, all of us must be thinking about how we hold each other, and that includes Black people. And so the standard for many people is to be as close to white as possible, or the desire is to be as close to white as possible. And so if you can't, if you're not white, well, how light are you? And years ago there was a brown paper bag test, and if you were lighter than that brown paper bag, then you had a different set of opportunities. If you were darker than that paper bag, then you missed out on a lot of opportunities. Colorism is extremely painful, and I have seen the pain on both sides. But it's extremely painful because you don't get to pick your skin color, right? Both of my parents are darker than me, but I still turned out this way. But you don't get to pick. And with Black people, there's been so much rape in our bloodline that you really don't know how your kids are going to come out, But in the Black community, there are many people who have adopted the same standards as the dominant society or the mainstream or the white society, meaning in terms of how beauty is defined. And so I think that colorism is very, very dangerous. It's very, very painful. And here's what I mean. If you look at pop culture, when this interview is over, if not tonight, tomorrow, go look at Black films. Look at the husband and look at the wife. The wife is
always lighter.
Almost always light
Always.
skinned. And then look at their kids. They're going to have a daughter who's light skinned, and they're going to have a son who's dark, right? And then look at women who are my complexion and darker. And TV series, they're most likely they're not going to be married. There was I wish I could remember the brand, but there was a brand that just launched a new product, and it was something about love. And everybody in their commercial was coupled except for the Black woman. There was a Black woman and she was single, right? But when you are constantly told, or when you constantly see that light is preferred, that is very, very hurtful. And so there are people who have been deeply, deeply traumatized. Now, by the same token, I have people in my family who are biracial. I have people in my family who are very, very fair, and they have received a ton of pain because they feel like, well, where am I accepted? I'm not accepted by white people. I'm not accepted by Black people. I didn't choose my skin color. I wrote an article on colorism for medium.com, and I wrote it last year. And what I said was that Black America still has a problem with dark-skinned Black women. And I stand by that. And if I could write that article over, the only thing that I would add is that there's a pain associated with being light too, because people want to exoticize you. People want to hold you accountable for things that you have no control. So that is a hot button topic. And Jen, I'll tell you something. I have not talked to a single Black woman who's dark skinned who cannot recount a painful experience based on their color.
Yeah, that doesn't, you know what? I'm not surprised. I don't know an adult woman that hasn't been violated as a woman. So why would there be a dark-skinned Black woman that hasn't been somehow vilified for being darker skinned? I mean, it's sad to me. The whole thing is sad to me.
It's not just vilified. It's what society presents as desirable.
As beautiful.
And so I have a rule in my house. If you want to give my daughter a gift, that's fine. But you better make sure that gift, if it's a baby doll, and I don't want too many of those, that it looks like her skin color, because I want her to see the beauty in the skin that she's in. She can't control that skin.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because when I was in college, I used to collect Cosmopolitan covers because there was this period of time when the art director who did them, they were really artsy and cool, and I used to collect them all, whatever. And I remember at one point there was a model on there who was really, really dark, and I just could not get over how beautiful she was. Like I thought she looked like she came from like the heavens or something. Like I thought she was just beautiful. And so, I get that, and just somehow that it never was something that I thought, and it bothers me that there's not more people that get this. And so what kind of stuff can we do to promote that, so that there are more things that are, inclusive for people, because I just think it's all about the more we see that as normal, the more we see that as beautiful, the more whatever the thing is. I just think that's what we need.
So I think that we need to all do our own anti-racism work, and we also need to really focus on anti-Blackness and what it looks like. I think producers and writers and directors and people who are in charge of casting, they have to do a better job of presenting the full range of of Black people. They can't just stick with this light-skinned version, because it's not fair to that person, and it's not fair to the rest of us. I think
it's not real. That's not real. Those are there's real people are varied.
Yeah, it's one piece, but I think that the more that we see diversity of hue in popular culture, in the media, I mean, you could even look at media at media outlets, and who are their anchors? If they have a Black anchor, who are they? And so the more that we can do to put different types of Black women on TV, in popular culture, on sitcoms, or what have you, the better.
Yeah. And I also think that racism can be very subtle in a way that people don't see it or don't recognize it when it happens. When Andrew Gillum ran for governor, I can remember when they did a debate, and they purposely hued his skin color as dark as possible on TV.
They did.
I said, I know what they're doing. I've seen this before. This is I am going to make the white suburbanite, whatever, housewife, whatever you want to say, I'm going to make them uncomfortable.
Make them well. That's
what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it becomes a subliminal reaction, as it is to a lot of things. The media has a lot of tricks, as you know, and they've been doing this forever. And if they think it's bad now, go back and look at some movies that were made even in the 80s and the way that Black people were depicted in film.
Okay, I grew up then. It's not that long ago, but yes, okay. Thank you.
I'm from the 80s.
Yeah,
but I'm
from the 80s.
All right, I'm 30s. I'll be 38 soon. So of course I'm supposed to be, totally removed from what it was really like when it was really bad. But the truth is, it's still bad. It's just done in subtle ways that again, if people are not waving the Confederate flag or letting the N-word fly or things like that, they think, well, it's okay. Everything's better now. No, it's actually not. They've gotten smarter about it and a lot more subtle about it. And that's why people don't necessarily notice it. And so that's always been, that's been my perspective. It's like when I see it, I don't ignore it. Some people brush it off like it's not a big deal. I'm like, no, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Because I don't think you understand how subliminal messaging actually works on people. And I do think that when it comes to systemic racism, that in itself is one of the biggest hurdles that we still need to clear. Obama was the proper amount of dark that white suburbia was comfortable with, versus somebody like Andrew Gillum, who is a Black man and is actually from a working class, rough, upbringing. There are people who simply are not accepting of that. And you see it all the time. And I do think, and I think this is a good segue to what I think is a very important topic, especially as it relates to where we're going in terms of how we have a progressive future. I don't think, Jennifer, people truly understand how powerful corporate media is and how they can push a narrative to get what they want. And if that means convincing people of basically accepting crumbs is the only thing you're deserving of in this society, it's amazing how many people will actually buy that and think, well, I guess it's all I'm worth, and that's that. So if you could talk about your perspective as a Black woman when it comes to corporate media and how they do control the narrative, how do you see that?
Well, I think that it's extremely important to invest in Black media, to invest in independent media. Extremely, extremely important. And I also think that, generally, broadly speaking, the media has been contracting for years. The number of jobs lost in journalism in 2020, I think it was the most, like in perhaps the last 5 years. And every year the job loss is staggering. And so if you go back to, I'm going to talk about this from the lens of race. But if you go back to the Kerner Commission report, so after the race riots in 1967, the Kerner Commission was put together, and they were charged with understanding the root causes of the riots. And one of the things they found when they released their report in 1968 was that the media did not fairly characterize or present Black people. The media did not include sufficient Black people, right? And so sometimes I think about that Kerner Commission report and those findings over 4 decades ago, 5 decades ago, right? And where we are today. And the media, there's still some representation on screen. There's not enough representation on screen, and there's certainly not enough behind. And so whenever you have that, how people are presented is going to be distorted, because when you silence a group of people and then you call yourself presenting the news, you're going to present a slanted version of the news. And remember what I said earlier about, I think that this nation is racist by default and anti-Black by default. And so when you have people who could care less, that is going to influence how the media covers different topics. So that's that. But then, the media is very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful. And so sometimes we consume so much media that sometimes we'll begin thinking things and you'll wonder, well, where did this come from? Well, it has to do with the amount of media and pop culture that you have consumed. And the way that the media, large corporations are buying up these small outlets. It used to be that you could go to a website and you could see who owned a media company. And now you have like these large companies that are buying up all of them. And it just
all roads lead to a small group of white men.
It presents a challenge. Yeah, it just presents a challenge.
That's really what it is. You could follow everybody now, and all roads lead to a handful of white men at the top that are controlling all of this, and they're controlling the narrative to better suit themselves. And I just think I can see it in my head.
If we're fighting amongst ourselves and not fighting the ones who are actually making these decisions, then we're going to continue to circle the drain. And it just seems to get worse and worse and worse every day.
Well, the other thing is that, the media has a financial incentive, right?
Oh,
and
yes.
So they benefit by showcasing certain things. And if it impacts their bottom line, then, that's going to be very hard for some people to turn away from in a capitalistic society.
Yeah. So this is what I was just thinking about, because I was looking in the mirror. I did a magic wand for you because I had that term Black girl magic in my head. And so I did a magic wand for you. But I really dig that phrase. I think it's really cool, and I really get it. And I have been very fortunate over the past couple of years to be able to form some very good relationships and closer friendships with Black people. And I hadn't had that before. I really hadn't had that before. And there is definitely something about Black girl magic. I've seen it. I don't know exactly what is that? What is that? It's a power.
I think Black women are amazing. I think that, I meet so many Black women who are just brilliant, whether or not they have 5 degrees or not, they're just brilliant. I think about the Black women in my family, and a lot of what I know about mothering, a lot of what I know about being a woman of integrity, it comes from the examples around me. And we live in a world where Black women are often undermined. And people say, oh, yeah, well, we should listen to Black women until we get into the boardroom, and then we silence them. Or, okay, no, Jennifer, we don't want to do that. Okay, you've made your point. Gosh, she's so angry. And so I think as a way to celebrate our beauty, to celebrate our strength, to celebrate our ingenuity, we think about Black girl magic and we think about the things that we do. And I don't want to say it's effortless because it, you know, it takes work and a lot of people would be surprised. And I think it's a way of affirming us. It's a way of loving us. It's a way of celebrating us in a world that is reluctant to do that, you know, in a world that is reluctant to see our beauty in all its shapes and all its forms. And so I like the phrase, and I also think that we should be careful that we include that we don't require Black women to jump through all these hoops in order to be considered magic. You know, you
Oh,
don't
no.
have to write a book to be considered magic. I think that we have to be careful, and that's what I tell myself, to just see the beauty and the wisdom in directly impacted people, in ordinary Black women who are doing their best to survive in a nation and in many workplaces that are not set up for our success.
Yeah. And I say it all the time. If you want something handled, you let a woman handle it. If you really need something handled, you give it to a Black woman because that is going to get done. It's, I don't know if it's because things are exponentially harder, because there's this history that is this very this group this group hurt that is there that just, I don't know what it is, but I'm always blown away. Always. It just surrounded by extremely amazingly powerful Black women. And it's been really cool past couple of years. That's what I think.
How much of the change can be brought forth through an economic agenda? I think a lot of people hesitate, and there's either a fear of some kind when they hear racial justice, if you will. When I think of reparations, I think it's very simple. I think it's bank investment in communities of color that desperately need help. Getting those bank loans, getting those economic opportunities. That's what real reparations are. People have this idea in their head. It's just, give me cash and that'll do it. No, it's not. It's an old adage of, you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. You teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. And it's this sort of idea that an economic agenda can really change the way racial justice is done in this country. Do you agree with that? And are there some ideas that you have as far as how we should look to do that going forward?
I think the topic of reparations, it's a topic that should only be discussed and decided by Black people who were directly impacted by. So I don't think it's appropriate for a non-Black person to say, this is what I think it should be. Black people need to decide that. And on the topic of economics and racial justice, both are important. And I also don't want to lose sight that when Dr. King died, he was fighting for economic justice. I think that, a lot of the problems in our society stem from people not being able to take care of themselves. When I think about high crime rates in different communities, that's not necessarily because people are indigent, because they're prone to violence. A lot of it is because they don't have a job that allows them to live a life with dignity. They don't have hope for the future. And so when I think about the role that economics can play, reparations absolutely comes there. And I think it might be cash payments. It could be other things, but it might be cash payments. I also think, student loan debt forgiveness, it has to be a part of the equation because Black people collectively I read an article by Tanisha Peoples. She's an education activist with an organization called Brightbeam. And she said that education was like the new poverty pimp. And when you think about Black people and student loans, it bears a horrible toll. So I think student loans have to be a part of it. For years, Black people were locked out of opportunities for home ownership. And then when they got to own a home, when they were able to own a home, the interest rates were so high, or they had balloon payments, or they had other things inside those packages that made the transfer of their homes to future generations unlikely and impossible. There must be redress for that. Healthcare is another way. It's one of the leading ways that people go bankrupt. That has to be addressed. So I think it's a lot. I think that economics is crucially important. And I think that racial justice is important. I also feel if we're unwilling to deal with racial injustice in this country, we probably aren't going to deal with the economic things that need to happen in order to really give people a shot at living, not just in their generation, but in future generations. What I think about in terms of the Black community is you see some people who make it against the odds, you know, and they've been able to save a little bit of money. Maybe they have a good income. And the pressure on that person to provide for so many people and their families, it can be overwhelming. And so if we really want to set Black people up for success, yes, we have to consider reparations. We have to look at student loan forgiveness. We have to look at healthcare. We also have to look at felony disenfranchisement laws, because those are disproportionately, all that stuff was designed not with public safety in mind, but as a way to suppress Black people. And that has to be reversed.
Yeah, criminal justice is a huge thing for me, and I've been talking about this for a long time. The fact that we have a profit motive for incarceration and for policing is just absolutely outrageous, and it's obviously going to disproportionately affect our most vulnerable people. And at this point, to me, I just look at it; it's just slave labor. That's just slave labor, and not only do they get slave labor, but then they actually profit off of the incarceration, and they profit off of people once they're even on probation. It's just this giant predatory money racket designed to suppress Black people and profit simultaneously. That's how I think of it.
And there's another area where Black women are disproportionately impacted. You know, there was a time when Black men were being incarcerated at alarming rates, and they still are. But now that mass incarceration engine, it is hungry for Black bodies. And so women are being incarcerated. But even when women are not being incarcerated at the same rates as Black men, they're still bearing the brunt of putting money on the books. And of course, like you said, there's a profit incentive for the companies that are allowed to run commissary, to run the phone programs. And Black women are carrying that burden as well. So when I think about the health disparities that impact Black women, racism is a direct contributor to those disparities. It's not just about what you eat or what you consume, but it's the toll of being Black in America.
Yeah, I can see that. And there's psychological impacts that affect health. And then there's also genetic impacts that affect health. And I think it's really important for people to understand that there is a distinction, and it is very critical to have Black representation in healthcare and Black voices in healthcare, because the approach, I'm in the middle of reading Medical Apartheid. And, you know, I've reached out to her a few times. I'd love to interview her, but this history, this like collective trauma history between the Black community and Western medicine is a huge thing, and I don't think it's as simple as just give everyone healthcare. I think that's the start. I mean, that's definitely financially the thing, but there needs to be more of a race connection with healthcare in Black communities. It's just something that is lacking.
Well, you know, there's a lot of work that there's absolutely racism in the medical industry, and medical apartheid really opened my eyes. And
it's freaking me out.
We also see it with COVID. I mean, Dr. Susan Moore was the doctor in Indiana, the Black woman doctor in Indiana, and even being a doctor was not enough to save her life. They treated this woman despicably. And so there's a ton of racism. There's a ton of racism in the medical industry. When you couple that with what's in our genes based on what our ancestors have experienced, and then you couple that with the inability to receive quality care based on our skin color, based on our gender, it's really disappointing. And all of this is enough to make a person just say, well, what is the use? You know, on every corner, I'm besieged. And so when people have the audacity and the courage and the willingness to just keep trying, when Black people have the audacity to just keep trying, I applaud them for that, because the challenges are great.
Yeah, I think so too.
We're speaking, of course, with Jennifer Farmar, author of First and Only, A Black Woman's Guide to Thriving at Work and in Life. We do want to obviously wrap things up, but I want to have you have the opportunity to share with the audience what are the most important things to take away from your book and why they should read it.
So, great question. The most important thing to take away from the book is that, one, I wrote the book with Black women in mind, but if you are someone who works with Black women who want to understand what Black women experience,
I downloaded yesterday.
yeah, the book is something that you need to read. And what's been interesting to me about this process is when I wrote the book, I saw Black women, but the feedback that I'm getting from women who are Southeast Asian and just women in general about how it has opened their eyes, that has been surprising, and it's also been enlightening, or not enlightening, but it's been encouraging. That even though it was written with Black women in mind, this book has something for everyone. And if you read the book and it does nothing more than show you how or support you as you work to become a better ally, then that's phenomenal, and the people in your circle, the people in your life will thank you for it. I think the other thing that I would leave is for us to really think about how we hold anger and how we think about anger when it shows up on different people, when it shows up on Black women, when it shows up on Black kids, like to really sit with, if we are experiencing discomfort, why is that? And would we feel the same way if the person was a different gender or a different race? I think that is a critical takeaway. And the final thing that I would say is First and Only is available at any bookseller.
I Kindled. I don't always Kindle. I prefer to paper, but I was kind of like feeling lazy, and so I Kindled. Yeah.
Yeah, so anywhere books are sold, you can get it on Kindle. And I'm asking people, when you read the book, leave a review. It doesn't matter if you like everything in it. Leave a review and share your feedback. I want to hear your feedback.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. That's next in line. I'm having a theme that's been continuing since Black History Month, because I'm not like the fastest of readers. And so, yeah, I'm just in it.
We're very grateful that you came on tonight, Jennifer. Obviously, it is a very important topic that doesn't get talked about enough. And if it makes you uncomfortable, then you probably should be talking a lot more about it than you normally do.
And it isn't always comfortable, and it isn't always easy, but I feel like I'm very appreciative. And that I used this quote before you even came on, where every day that we live has to be an act of resistance.
Yeah.
And I feel that, like, I understand that. And it's every day I feel like, okay, I'm sort of understanding a little bit more and a little bit more. And I'm very appreciative that you came on and you would talk about this, and I'm looking forward to reading it. And I will definitely send a comment. I will post a comment.
And one last thing I will mention, which I do think is very relevant to this topic, believe it or not, what the progressives just did in the state of Nevada by taking over the Democratic State Party, by eliminating people on their board that have the corporate donors' interests in mind first and foremost, and not the needs of the working class. I do think that is the type of thing that will set in motion the type of changes that this country needs, especially from a racial justice standpoint. Because if you're not motivated by corporate special interests and you're motivated by equality and justice, then that is what is going to happen in a lot of other parts of the country. Hopefully in Florida, hopefully in Ohio.
I'm not holding my breath.
Well, we got to try.
Well, yeah. Or like I said, maybe, see somebody like Nina wins and then we just move to Ohio.
Well,
I have to hedge my bets. If Lee Carter wins in Virginia, that becomes a good place to go. But I don't know. Florida's going into the ocean fast.
Jennifer, it's very difficult to talk up Florida. Unfortunately, we have we certainly earn our reputation. At least Ohio has a real. It's a very unique state. It's so much. It's so much of everything. And obviously, you're in the true working class, part of the state in Northeast Ohio. And so, we obviously are very grateful.
Ohio.
You're Central Ohio.
What, Cincinnati?
Columbus.
Okay.
I was there for a concert. You have that really nice outdoor venue there.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? It's really nice. I mean, well, we don't have that here like that.
No, but I'm guessing, are you a Buckeyes fan? Do I have
to? I'm from Columbus, so I have to cheer for the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
But I actually went to school in New York, University of Rochester.
Ah, okay. Very
Oh,
cool.
I went and visited there a couple times last year. My son was looking at Eastman School of Music, and that was my first time there. But
Yeah.
then I got to go there again. I actually kind of dig Rochester, and that is where the Susan B. Anthony house is, and the cool little sculpture with her and Frederick Douglass having like tea at the park. And have you seen this?
I have.
It's
But
really
like
cool.
I said, yeah, I spent a lot of time there, and actually, I played the bassoon, so I would go over to the Eastman School for practice.
Wow. Yeah, that's very impressive.
Well,
Plus that you played the bassoon.
I don't play anymore, but at that point, I did.
And I also want to tell you before you go, like I said, I didn't get to see you when you were doing the interview with Nina, and you were explaining how you decided to let your hair dread. And so I was thinking, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing, like, this is so cute. You look so cute. You look like really youthful. It's just really, really cute. So I like it.
I did not end up doing the dreads, but my hair is, or I started, but I didn't finish. My hair is natural.
It was just a project. It's hard work.
Well,
I won't get into hair, so.
Well, all I can say as a white man, guys, it is so much easier to be a man on this planet.
Just please.
So let's give our ladies a little bit more respect.
I'll remind you of that.
Yeah, but especially our ladies of color. We really need to be conscientious of the fact that this is a systemic problem and not just something that's overt. So with that said, we were very grateful that you came on, Jennifer. We will continue to spread the word, and we hope to see you down the road.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Very lovely.
And did you notice that even though her name has 8 letters in it, I was able to get it on the chalkboard, because if there is anything I can do, it is squeeze the word Jennifer into any size space.
Well, you learned how to do that.
That's the thing. That is if her name was something else, there's no way I could have gotten the 8 letters across as neatly as I did.
She brought up a very interesting but yet controversial topic where she said that, no black people are racist. I agree that there has to be a distinction between racist and bigoted.
Well, it's racist and colorist.
Correct.
That's but
what I'm saying is that someone say, "Oh, there's no black people can be racist." No, it's not about that. What it is about bigotry. It is true that racist is really about it's a form of racial classism, essentially. And so this belief that I am of a certain race, so that way I am superior to you, it can only matter if it's based on actual power that can be ascertained. And so right now, I would agree that the way that because racism means that you find your race to be superior to that of another race. So by definition, white people are inherently in a world that is racist to black people. Well, because the white world is the construct within which it exists within the United States.
No, not just the United States. No, this is across the world. It's pretty global.
Which is also very interesting that if you want to talk about medical apartheid, which is a very...
You are going to need to read this book. I mean, I'm almost done, but there are things that... Like, there's things that I'm glad I know, and then there's things that I could have been happy never knowing.
What's interesting is, we complain about how the COVID vaccine distribution has been done in the United States. Why don't you look at how it's being done around the world, especially in countries, in Africa, for example. They're not being distributed very well. In fact, it's deliberate that they're being distributed in a very poor way. This is not... again, this isn't an accident. No. It's a lot of these things are done deliberately. And that's, like I said, it's not about this woe is me. You're just trying to find racism where it doesn't exist. No, it's the subliminal components of racism that I don't think people really understand.
These are old, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We don't have any new ones. Okay.
Not at the moment. No.
Okay.
We haven't been pushing for it, but
that's
we will.
Fine. Okay.
So, I think it's very important that, we do have these uncomfortable conversations, because if we don't have them, we're never going to solve the problem. We are never going to get to the point where we are able to not look at a situation and say, well, this is based on, this type of a roadblock or that type of a roadblock. I mean, I do think economics plays a very significant role.
It's an exponential factor. Everything is exponential. If something negatively affects a white man, middle class. It's even worse for a white woman. It's even worse for a black man. And it is infinitely worse for a black woman. And that is always, there is a hierarchy, and black women have tended to be at the bottom of that hierarchy. And it's in a way that isn't just financial, yes, but it is this like collective trauma, self-esteem, and it gets passed from generation to generation. And it's exponentially worse for black women.
And the only thing that I think really leads to, why people are, I would say not making this a central focus of their daily lives in terms of how they see things going forward politically. I think the biggest reason is just the fact that so many people live in dire straits. It just depends at what level you're living at. But I think for most that have, food anxiety, financial anxiety, health anxiety, whatever it may be, if it's perceived to be something that they can't either benefit from or they can't personally affect, they're not necessarily going to be as concerned about whether making that a priority, because they have their own priorities. And that's how this system is set up. It is set up to have you living in perpetual fear all the time. That's why the media is going berserk about making sure that that Joe Biden just did you a big favor and he's a great president and he is not doing you any harm. And it's like, no, he gave you just enough to get by momentarily. That is not a victory. That is simply kicking the can down the road, which is what the political establishment always does. Notice how they're not talking about what just happened in Nevada. The reason it is being talked about is because to the credit of The Intercept and Ryan Grimm, he put out the article about what just happened, and that got moving all throughout social media. But I am telling you, the relevant people in media in terms of the bigwigs, they are not talking about this, and they're not going to.
Of course not.
This is the change that we so very much seek on all sides of the political spectrum. We don't want government intrusion. We want the government to work for us, and right now it doesn't. We also
we're fighting it like an uphill battle. Yeah. It's just we spend all of our time constantly on defense.
It's interesting that Jimmy's here and Sam is here, so it's interesting how that happens.
No, I know that it's Sam.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
convinced
sure.
that he's convinced that this is not actually Jimmy coming on our show. Maybe it's not.
Who's convinced of that?
Well, I mean, look, anything's possible.
It's not Jimmy. If he was really wanting to communicate, he could text me. He doesn't respond.
The other thing I want to say is to our audience that's out there, we're not going to have the biggest names on our show all the time. We're going to have very important people come on, talk about very important topics that is important for people to learn about. Yes, we will have big names, and next Saturday.
Saturday, I am hosting a Pardon Assange live stream telethon. And we have a lot of big name people that are coming on. But really, this is what I was talking with you about earlier, that, we do it as a live stream, and that's fun and all, and people can comment, and that's great. But really what I'm doing is creating a library of podcasts of information that are going to help move a progressive agenda forward. So whether you want to go back and look at an interview I did with this author or this person,
look forward to it.
And that's really what this is about. We have experts on to talk about things. So this isn't just about, it's this fun live stream. I do it to specifically talk with people that I think are bringing information forward that we should all have and that is important. So it isn't so much about live stream as it is that I feel like we're building a nice little library of information that is helpful.
Yes.
We sit here and banter, but for the most part, I'm trying to put information out there that I think is important. Whether it's labor issues, legislative issues, race issues, like just different things that change the narrative.
Yeah, and that's really what we are trying to do.
Yeah.
We're trying to change the narrative, and we're trying to make
It's not Jimmy John. If he wanted to contact us, he could text.
Jimmy John.
Yeah, Jimmy John. It's not Jimmy, John.
So yeah, and that's and that is the essence of, hey Lou, everyone's saying hello. Happy. Yes. And so we do understand that it does take time to build a strong library, and you know, a lot of
I love that we talk to expert people and things. First of all, if all I did was talk to just commonly known famous talking heads, what is that going to do? That's just really living in this echo chamber of just talking about the same things over and over again. The goal is to bring people on with different areas of expertise that can contribute something to our little gathering.
All
here.
I can tell you is that if you've never lived in poverty, if you've never lived with food, what's the word I'm looking for?
Insecurity.
Insecurity. I've lived it, and I lived it for a couple of years. And let me tell you something, there is nothing I wouldn't do to prevent myself from ever having to go back to that again. And
nobody should be in that position. It's just, this is ridiculous in this country.
And this is, it gets to the point where you really have to set your differences aside, and you have to stop getting angry all the time, because a lot of people are always bickering back and forth, trying to say that, oh, this person stinks, that person stinks. Yeah, guess what? When times are not good, a lot of things are going to happen that way.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's just, we're in this position where we need a Labor Party. Like it all comes back to, we need a general strike. We need a Labor Party to lead it. We need something.
So as you guys know, Jennifer Farmer, who did write, Margaret
Kimberly.
Yes. I don't want to get this wrong. I do not want to make this mistake. So I just want to make sure that I say this correctly. First and only, a Black woman's guide to thriving at work and in life.
Yeah. Well, you could put up the graphic if you want.
So
the graphic is right there.
So not only was it obviously a big deal to have this lovely lady on here tonight, but she also happens to be somebody who is, she's very close with Nina Turner.
I know. You know what? But that was not the point of this visit.
No.
The point of this visit was to discuss this book, because I think that this is important. And I think that there was a void in that area.
I do think it's a void in that area. And I do think that I believe that somebody like her is, when you have a network of people that start working in concert with one another for the cause.
Well, that's
not about just a career.
It's a coalition.
But for a cause. And when you have this coalition, you lean on each other and you build off of one another. And that's what we want to do with people like Jennifer. And what's even more interesting is that our guest that is coming on Monday.
And this is Margaret Kimberly's coming on Monday. See now? Okay. I wasn't aware of that, because, so is that, all right, I'm going to have to do my little research, but, on Mondays, we're doing like labor in Florida stuff. So are we just not on Monday, or is she labor related?
No, but we could switch it up. We'll see what right now we do have planned to have Margaret Kimberly on. I don't think we have
That's fine.
a guest for Thursday as of yet. But my point is, Margaret Kimberly is somebody who is another person who really understands the agenda that needs to be put forward. In fact, I think she's involved with the Black Agenda Report, which is a great online organization.
Well, like I said, everything that affects people affects them exponentially more. So all of the economic issues are of a huge importance to Black community.
And not only that, but she also is somebody who is very close to Dr. Cornel West, and who we are hoping will also have on the live stream at some point.
Oh, I don't know if I can handle that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that I can handle it. I'm telling you, that would be really difficult for me to keep my shit together.
He is our modern day Dr. King. He is. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that.
And honestly, for me, I'm so sapiosexual. Like people that are really smart and I know, and it's this ridiculous giddy. I don't. It happens sometimes.
Extremely grateful that we do have scholars like him that are standing up for what is right and is not just doing it for money. And a lot of people do end up doing that. A lot of people end up, like we were talking about earlier, with that Brooklyn dad guy who is getting paid a lot of money by the Democratic Party to basically spew nonsense. Yeah, you can talk about how great the Democrats are and how terrible Trump is, but the second that you challenge power within the party infrastructure, you are done.
And they come after you in your little academia world too, because now he's dealing with this tenure nonsense.
Correct. So don't think for a second that these problems are not substantially vital for us to deal with. They are. And they're not going to get easier. They're going to get harder, because the second you really start to chip away at the machine, there's bribery that could happen. If you're a robber baron, if you will, you're worth $50 billion.
Who's that?
Whoever.
All right.
Could be Warren Buffett, could be Bill Gates. Why is Bill Gates buying up so much farmland?
Oh, you don't think that there's a connection between him, farmland, GMOs, vaccinations, and Africa?
1,000.
All those things are connected in a very scary post-apocalyptic way.
So what you have to remember is when people get really desperate, it's not going to be hard to buy them off. So what's $60,000 to rich aristocrats if they can gin up a lot of this anger online with a guy like Brooklyn Dad? What is that? It's pennies on the dollar. So that's why you have to get smart.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to see through what is being done. When people throw a roadblock at you, you have to know that it is an impediment to progress, as Jen likes to say, because that is essentially what is happening.
That's the problem with all of the divisiveness. It isn't the name calling. It's not that it's offensive. It's all impediments to progress.
John is right. People can die is how risky it can get. And that is what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because there is going to be a mass extinction, and it's going to happen to the most vulnerable first.
Oh, you're talking about climate crisis. I'm picturing Kirsten Sinema getting guillotined because of this nonsense.
That's just one aspect of it. I really do think that society is hanging on by a thread.
Oh, I think it's going to get way ugly.
And apparently,
I need a yellow vest.
And forgive me for not remembering, guys, but I know that there was something that I read today. You know what? I'm going to look it up right now.
I really need a yellow vest.
So apparently, there's a very, very interesting caveat. This is the last thing I want to close with for tonight.
What if I had a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to talk about?
Did you?
No.
Okay.
But I could have.
So here's something that a lot of people don't know about that I discovered today.
Uh-oh.
The COVID relief bill passed the House and is headed to Biden's desk, which will become law. And yes, it includes the $1,400 stimulus checks. However, unlike Trump's relief package, this one lacks any rules stopping debt collectors from seizing those $1,400 when they land in your bank account. That's pretty bad. And this is not going to get talked about in the media, but it has to be talked about. Because
so they're giving us money, but it's easily taken away, is what you're saying.
So not only was this a means-tested $1,400 one-time check, but for the people who actually are getting it and are in massive amounts of debt,
they're not getting it.
They're not getting it. So how many people are now going to start to complain and say,
most of those people,
what happened to my money?
Well, not most, but a lot of the people, especially people that are basically only where they are now because they can't, the evictions are still on a moratorium. But what about the back rent, like that is a massive problem.
Graham Elwood, a friend and a good person and somebody who lost his home in California back in 2009 when they screwed him royally. If you don't know Graham Elwood's story about what he went through with his home and how it was seized by One West Bank and Steve Mnuchin, you know, the person that our vice president protected from prosecution because he paid her a lot of freaking money not to do it.
If he had just been a nonviolent drug offender, then he would have been incarcerated for the rest of his life.
Probably so. But what happened to Graham is going to happen again because of stories like this.
Oh, as soon as the eviction moratorium is truly lifted after COVID and all of the back rent is due, we're going to see levels of homelessness that we've never seen in this country.
And they're not going to be able to hold this off until the next election cycle.
And they're not going to be able to keep bulldozing the encampments away and thinking that's going to solve the problem either, because people are, I honestly, that is why when Kirsten Sinema was so brazen, is she putting like a crosshairs on her forehead? Because I'm fascinated on a daily basis that more people aren't getting
It's
attacked.
A very interesting point that Ken made. And I know Ken is a conservative, and that's perfectly fine. We accept anybody on our show. But what we will say is this. $6,000 could have been given to everybody. You could have just done a $1.9 trillion stimulus package and just given every person in this country $6,000. Now you ask yourself, well, why would a millionaire, a well-off person, or whatever need $6,000? They don't need it. That's not the point. You tax it back.
Yeah,
that's it.
This is not
Very
rocket
simple.
science, people. Everyone gets the money. Everyone gets the money.
They want you to be convinced that this requires a very intelligent, smarter than you type of person to tell you that this is all you're worth. But it's not true.
How do people not recognize that every other country has figured this stuff out? Like why do people think this is complicated?
Keep that in mind when you keep talking about that. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So just a thought.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me saying that was my plan. I don't have plans. First of all, I can't build things, but I don't have plans. I just feel like the natives are getting very restless.
They are.
And some woman walks in there with this let them eat cake attitude, and things are going to happen. I mean, let me tell you, every single person is just one tragedy away from losing it. Okay. So I don't know what I would or wouldn't do if my kid if we couldn't afford the brain surgery that my kid needed, or I couldn't afford to feed my kid. I don't know what I wouldn't do. No. And I see someone like that going and doing that. This is the kind of stuff. I'm sorry. I mean, it's like if people do not want to have themselves be targets, then they shouldn't act with behavior that makes them be targets.
No, and I definitely agree that that's definitely a big part of where this is going, because again, the devil is in the details. The corporate media is, and remember, the corporate media, especially the Biden voter, is a comfortable suburbanite. That is predominantly who they're catering to. But let me tell you something. This caveat that I just discovered this afternoon about the fact that they are going to take that $1,400 away from you if you're in debt. I mean, they are just asking for this thing to really blow up.
That's what I mean.
They
All it
really
takes is
want this
one
thing to
horrible
get bad.
tragedy. I mean, we've seen movies like this where the guy has no money and he can't afford the kid's surgery, so he holds the hospital hostage or
John
whatever.
Q.
Okay. But we are getting in a place where we're going to have increased amounts of people that are desperate. And what are the odds that of those increased people that are desperate, that somebody is a little bit more towards the psychosis than another person? You know, it's like you're just tempting fate. I mean, it's a matter of time.
Last thing I will mention, and this is for our conservative viewers. If you are not familiar with...
It's so funny. Do we really have conservative viewers?
Sure.
We have conservative viewers.
So modern monetary theory basically states that because we are a country that produces its own currency, we can never not produce it. Budgets have to be met at the county or local and state level. At the federal level, you simply have to you have to manage inflation.
I know, Ken. That's all good.
So with that said, understanding why we are able to print money as needed is very important to this actual problem that we're dealing with here. Nobody in this country has to live in poverty. Nobody in this country has to work for a slave wage.
We don't need homeless people.
You don't need homeless people.
No. We
don't
have
need people
more than enough
accommodations. You don't need people starving.
We have more than enough food.
We don't need to destroy our planet. We do not need to have universal health care. Universal health care costs less and produces more. Why? Because we have a for-profit middleman system in this country.
Yeah, it's a problem.
United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna. We're going to have Wendell Potter come on our podcast, and he is going to talk about this. This is a very big issue. Is understanding the basic economics of this country and how it actually can work for you. They don't want you to know about this, and this never gets talked about. This can work for the most conservative and the most progressive. See,
so when you say, okay, we could take money out of the military budget, first of all, the military budget is outrageous. That thing needs to be cut in less than half. That is just but even if we didn't, we could still have what we want.
Right.
So that's the point. Like, we're brainwashed to think that the only way we can have this is if we don't have that. Why?
And Ken, I will point this out to you, who happens to be a Trump supporter, and this is what you need to understand. The Trump tax cuts, if they were just done to benefit working and middle-class families, you'd have an argument. The Trump tax cuts were the greatest upward transfer of wealth this country's ever seen. When that happens, it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter who's in power. The corporate donors will ultimately decide that this is how this gets done. It's not as bad because it already has happened once, but I can assure you that the corporate welfare that is in Biden's bill is the same percentage essentially because of how much is actually in it. Remember, the CARES Act was, I think, was it $5 trillion or $6 trillion? It was.
These are just made up numbers.
Exactly.
These are made up numbers.
Ben Bernanke has said it. It's just numbers on a computer.
It doesn't even mean anything.
No.
There's no substance behind it. It's all, this is crazy.
Everything is all about what is my labor worth to you, and that's how you get paid.
Yeah.
That is the basic, that is basic economics. That's what it is. You can print money, but you can't actually make it worth anything unless somebody's working for it.
Oh, we need to get Linda Joseph on. She got back to me and finally responded.
Why don't we look to have it?
We can talk. Let's talk about that after.
Yes,
but I'd
like to be here for Linda Joseph as well.
Okay.
We got a lot to discuss, and I really wish we had like 50, 60, 100 people, because I would love to have these back and forth conversations with our crowd.
I understand that, but we do have to
look
look at this. So, like, for example, when Nina does her podcast, and I am not by any means comparing myself to Nina, but there's no live, right? So she just does her interview.
I think this is fun.
I'm just saying you can't go by that number. You got to go by ultimately the people that watch it as a content. I don't know. I'm not sure what matters more. I mean, I know you wanted to see.
No, I think that I do, but I also think that having a live conversation with people who have like-mindedness about what we're trying to do here, I think is very important. So I would ask you, Chuck, Ken, Nina, everybody, refer at least one person the next time we go live on Monday to tune in.
Just link it. Send a little link. Is that an easy thing for people to do? Because I'm challenged.
You can retweet it. You can share it on Facebook. You can absolutely text it.
We're Sisyphus people. We're rolling this big boulder up a hill.
This is how it has to be done. If you really want us to grow, you got to be organic about it. It's the only way it's going to happen, because they are deliberately suppressing. As a matter of fact, one more thing I will circle back to from the beginning of the show. Oh, I don't even think we've got it in the conversation. Oh, here we are. Just made it. So as you guys can see, Chuck pointed this out earlier in the live stream. These channels are being suppressed.
We're going to be suppressed.
Oh, if we get big enough, they're going to come.
And it's inevitable.
You speak truth to power, and this is what's coming. So
they've had this going on the entire.
Yeah, I didn't even mean to put that up there. That was funny. Yes. No, but again, very important that you guys spread the word, because that's the only way this is going to work. We are never not only that, but something I just discovered. If you try to type in generational change, we are a monetized channel, mind you, with almost 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you type it in the nav bar, it will not come up. Really? You have to type it all the way out, hit search, and then it will appear. So what does that tell you?
They're not doing
that's suppression.
Favors.
Hey,
yeah, so much for free speech.
Yeah,
it's dwindling. So everybody, make sure that you check out next Saturday on the 20th, where we're doing our Assange live stream.
If you think we're suppressed now, you wait till you see what happens after this live stream.
Okay, look, I haven't looked at the final. I haven't looked at the final schedule clearly. I mean, I saw we've got like the spaces are filling up. But what stands out in my mind is sitting and talking with Medea Benjamin and John Kiriakou at the same time is really cool. Like,
yes,
like there's just certain people that are coming on that are really fighters in what we're trying to do. And it's exciting.
And the biggest one of all, of course, is Chris Hedges.
We have Chris Hedges coming on
now. So
which is very exciting, especially talking about things like free speech. Talk about somebody who has been deplatformed.
And one of the truly best friends that Jen has made, that I've observed in this entire political process, has been Katie Halper, who actually has gone out of her way for her, and vice versa. And I'm sure
Katie's
you guys will definitely enjoy having.
Oh, it's going to be great
to schmooze.
And I also thought what's nice about having somebody share it with me is the bathroom break situation is nice. The ability. Well, hey, the struggle is real. I've seen people that when they do like a really long live stream, sometimes you got to go. I mean, like, there's only so much you could do. So it is nice to have somebody co-hosting for the bathroom.
We thank you guys for coming on as always. Like I said, keep spreading the word. Let everybody know about the live stream for tonight. And of course, as always, we appreciate you. Keep spreading the word. We love you guys.
Peace out.